Good morning. My name's Harrison. I'm one of the pastors here, and I just want to welcome you to First Broad Street. You went on an hour less of sleep tonight, but yet you're all here, and you're excited, and you're here to worship God, and that's an amazing thing. I'm just so excited about so much of the stuff that's getting ready to go on here at First Broad Street. Starting next week, or this weekend, is our mission celebration. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more toward the end of the service, but we're just really excited about all the things that are going to be going on here in the life of our church with that. And then also, I'm really excited about, later on in my sermon, I'm going to talk to you about an opportunity that we think God is calling First Broad Street to move toward. And we're just really excited about this. And there's a way for everyone to get involved, whether this might be your very first Sunday here. This might be a church that you've grown up in since you were just a kid. There's a way for you to get involved with this. But before all of that, I want to remind you that we are in this sermon series that's called The God That We Can Know, in which we're looking at the I Am sayings of Jesus. And last week, Amanda talked to you about Jesus saying, I am the bread of life, and how the only way that you're going to be able to find satisfaction, the only way that you're going to be able to find fulfillment in your life is through Jesus Christ, that there's no other way, that everything that the world offers, that everything that the world tells you you need, you don't really need. The only thing that you really need is Jesus, and then everything else will take care of itself. And as followers of Christ, we know that. And so it becomes the job of the church to go into the world, to go into our community, and to offer the bread of life to people, that is Jesus Christ. Isn't it interesting that those things that society tells us we need, things like money, things like power, things like control, things like lust, all of these things that are bombarding us every single day, isn't it interesting that when we chase those things, we end up empty in the end? That once we chase them, once we've gotten them, we never really get enough of them. There's always more and more and more. You can never have enough money. And so we just continue chasing down this path, and it leaves us empty at the end of the day. And it's so easy to get trapped in that kind of thinking. Research shows us that about 75% of all adults are looking for ways to live a more meaningful life. That 3/4 of all adults, Christians, non-Christians, the whole shebang, all of us, realize that this world doesn't offer what we want. That this world hasn't offered us enough to satisfy our souls. And it's so interesting to me that Jesus, when he comes on the scene, he says that the only way for you to get a satisfaction, the only way for you to get fulfillment, the only way for you to live the life that God has for you is through me. That I am the bread of life. I am the only one that can give you satisfaction. I am the resurrection and the life. That I am the only one that can bring you fulfillment in your life. And so when we hear these I am sayings of Jesus, we realize that when Jesus tells us he is the bread of life, that he's telling us that through him only satisfaction can come, but that we become the bearers of that news. As the church, that we have to go into the world and we have to bear that message to others. And that's not always easy to hear. Because when we realize that the only way we're going to get true life, the only way we're going to get true satisfaction, the only way we're going to get fulfillment, the only way we're going to get real guidance, when we hear that it's only through Jesus, that means we have to start doing things Jesus' way. And that we can't do things our way. Because what we realize is that our way and Jesus' way are at polar opposites. That the way that Jesus does things isn't the way that we normally would do things. And when we hear that message, that can be hard to swallow. And so, because it's really hard to give up things that we want to do our way. Take a look at this video. Bacon is good for me. There are times that when we follow Jesus, we have to let go of stuff that we don't really want to let go of. There are times that when we follow Jesus, we have to do things in a new way. That we have to do things in a different way than we've done them in the past. And that's hard to hear. That's hard to accept sometimes. But we know that when we follow Jesus, it makes all of the difference in the world. And so what we're going to be talking about today is Jesus when he says, I am the light of the world. And so if you have your Bibles, I would invite you to open up to John chapter 8. It's just one little verse that I want to share with you. Jesus spoke to the people again, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me won't walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I love that Jesus tells us that he is the light of the world because light makes sense to us. Right? We understand what light is. We understand how light works. And we need light to see things. Without light, we're blind. Without light, we don't know which direction to go. Without light, we can't walk or get anywhere. We have to have light to be able to move. But if we rely on our own sight, what will eventually happen is that we're going to be fooled. If we rely on our own sight, we're going to end up making mistakes. And so look at some of these optical illusions. It's a bunch of black dots up there, right? No. How about the next one? Right, a longer line and a shorter line? Yeah, same. How about the next one? Parallel lines or curved lines? How about the next one? Now this one is a big deal. Over the past week on the internet, this picture has been talked about more than any other world event. It's being called the dress that broke the internet. And the reason why is because it is a blue and black dress. It is a blue and black dress. But because of the pigment of the colors and because of the exposure of the picture, a lot of us see a gold and white dress. And so who sees a gold and white dress? Who sees a blue and black dress? And so our eyes, for several of us, our eyes can play tricks on us. And so what I see when I look at that is I see a gold and white dress. But it's not. It's a blue and black dress. And there have been millions and millions of people that have argued over this picture because our eyes can play tricks on us. You might need to get your eyes checked, Joyce. Friends, when Jesus is not our light, and when Jesus is not our guide, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. And so I want to talk to you about 3 things that this passage teaches us about Jesus being the light of the world. And I think that we can truly understand these 3 things and truly live into them because probably we already know these 3 things. But what does it look to actually practice these 3 things and to live into these 3 things? And if we can do that, I think it will change so much. The first thing is that the Christian life is a pilgrimage. And when Jesus says, whoever follows me won't walk in darkness, that implies that we are walking together. That we're not just meeting Jesus somewhere. That life is a journey and that we haven't arrived yet. Friends, this world is not our final destination. And we have to begin living like that because when we live like that this world isn't the end, it changes everything. It changes how you spend your money. It changes how you spend your time. It changes how you work. It changes how you interact with people. It changes what you care about. It changes how the church does church. But we have to be people that live into that realize that the Christian life is a pilgrimage. The second thing that this passage teaches us is that Jesus gives us only enough light to follow him. That Jesus doesn't give us enough light to see the destination. Think about it this way. This flashlight that I have right here, Chuck found this flashlight for me, and we have some natural light. It's pretty. If I was trying to take a journey and I knew I was going to have to walk a couple of miles and I shine this flashlight a couple of miles down, I wouldn't be able to see the end of my journey. A flashlight is really good for seeing immediately around me, for me to see my next few steps. Jesus is the same way. That he gives us only enough light to see our next few steps. So when we follow Jesus, we have to step out in faith. We have to sometimes start moving in a direction before we know where we're going to end up. And that's hard to do. That's hard to do as people. That's hard for me to do. That's hard to do as a church. But it's the same way that as a church, we must be willing to follow God even when it's risky. Because he only gives us one step at a time. And it's only after we take those next few steps that we're going to be able to see the light to take the next few steps after that. And on and on and on it goes. The last thing that Jesus teaches us about light is that not only is he the light of the world, but he also calls us, his followers, the church, the light of the world as well. Listen to Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's good for nothing except to be thrown away and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines on all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people so they can see the good things you do and praise your Father who is in heaven. And so when Jesus calls us the light of the world, the question we have to ask is this: what does it look like for First Broad Street United Methodist Church to be that light? What does it look like for us to be the light of the world? What does it look like for us to be the light of Kingsport? Because that's what I want. As your pastor, that's what I want. I want everyone in Kingsport to know that First Broad Street United Methodist Church is a place that if they are walking in darkness, they can come to find light. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here. That's why we gather here together. So that those that are blind can see. The problem is, not everyone's going to come to us. Right? No matter how good the services are, no matter how good or how many things we do, we still just have about 800 people that come here in a town of 50,000. And still, 80% of all the people out of that 50,000 don't go to church on a regular basis. And so what does it look like for us to be the light of the world? Because they don't come to us. And that's fine that they don't come to us. Because we don't have to go to God. Right? That's not what God expects of us. God doesn't expect us to go to him. What God does is he comes to us. That before you were ever born, God came to you and he died for you. Before anyone else ever knew your name, God knew you. And yet he still died for you. And so as a church, what does it look like for us to reflect that attitude of God? That we're not going to just make people come to us to hear the good news, but rather we're going to flip that on its head just like Jesus Christ did when he came in flesh to earth. And we're going to go to the people and tell them the good news. One of the things that we've discovered is that the greatest generation, which is just a couple of you all in here, the baby boomer generation, which is several of you, and then the Generation Xers, that's people between 1960 and 1980, they've all been willing to drive whatever distance needed to meet their needs. So if some of you all work at Eastman, you probably know people that drive from Southwest Virginia, that drive from all the way, maybe in Rogersville or even past there. People that drive all the way from Unicoi County just to come in to work at Eastman. They're willing to drive whatever distance necessary to be able to meet their needs. But the millennial generation, that's my generation, that's people born after 1980, they long for community. My generation wants to live where we work. We want to shop where we work, or we want to live where we shop. And lastly, but just as importantly, we want to worship where we live. And so it becomes really important for us to understand as the church that the next generation probably won't come to where we are. That in order to reach the next generation, we have to be willing to go to where they are. We have to be willing to leave our walls. We have to be willing to go to them. And so the situation that we're in currently is this, that we have a traditional worship service that really has a bright future. My generation really appreciates, especially if we're church people that grew up in church, my generation really appreciates traditional worship, more so than any other generation since the greatest generation. The other thing that we know is that this service in here is thriving. Right now, if you look around you, a year ago at 8:30, we wouldn't have had nearly this many people in here. And then if you come here at 10:45, we're pushing over 90% capacity every single Sunday, and several Sundays we're at over 100% capacity, and we have to bring in chairs. And that's an amazing and an awesome thing. But it's a challenging thing because it leaves us in a tight spot. It leaves us in a place where we need more space. And so one of the things we've done to try to relieve some of the pressure is to create a 9:40 service. And so right after this service, you all know that in the chapel we have another unplugged contemporary service. And that's going very, very well. But it hasn't helped our problem. We're still booming at the seams. And so we have a couple of options. One option is that we can build a new building so that we can house a larger worship space. But if you know anything about around here, we're downtown, we're in historic zoning, and so a new building would cost around $6 to $8 million. Not only don't we have the money for that, we also don't have the space for that. We don't have the parking for that. But that's an option. The other option is to keep adding more services. But what we're finding is that there's certain times that people are willing to go to church, and they're not really willing to go to church outside of those times. And so that makes it a really hard option as well. And so what we've decided that we're going to do is this, that we have a traditional worship that meets on Sundays in the sanctuary, that we have contemporary worship that meets in here in the fellowship hall on Sundays, and then we have another service, another campus that meets somewhere else in Kingsport on Sundays. That we're going to be willing to increase our worship space without having to build, without having to make a lot of risks, and in a very safe way be able to meet a whole lot of new people. People that we normally otherwise would have never have been able to meet. When you really think about it, when we look at starting a new campus, we're already acting as two campuses, if you can go with my language here. That we have a campus that's over in the sanctuary. They do their thing. They are a completely different worship experience than we are in here. And then we have this campus in here, completely different. But whether if you go over there or if you attend worship in here, you still come to First Broad Street United Methodist Church. That whether you make this your worship home or you make that your worship home, you're still part of First Broad Street United Methodist Church. Now, what we aren't doing is this. We're not trying to start a new church. We're just simply looking to increase the amount of space and the amount of people that we can reach here in Kingsport. Because we know this, that we are better together. That we are better together. You know, part of being a pastor, I get paid to do this, which is great, is interacting with our community. Part of my job is really just to go out and to spend time with people, just to go out and be seen and be part of community activities, and that's an amazing and a great thing. So I'm able to meet a whole lot of people. And it's interesting that about half the people that I meet know about First Broad Street. They know where First Broad Street is. They know about all the things that First Broad Street does, how we reach our community, how we reach out into our world, and just how great of a church we are, which is absolutely true. But that's about half the people. And then the other half of the people that I meet don't have a clue what First Broad Street is. They don't have a clue where First Broad Street is, and they've never really heard about First Broad Street. Friends, I desperately want First Broad Street United Methodist Church to be a place that every single person in Kingsport knows that they are welcomed. That every single person in Kingsport knows that they will be loved, that every single person in Kingsport knows that they will be able to meet Jesus. I desperately want to be that kind of church. I want the people that hate church because they've been hurt by church to know that First Broad Street's a safe place. I want the people that have had other awful experiences with Christians to know that here at First Broad Street, we represent the real Jesus. The Jesus that loves you, the Jesus that accepts you, the Jesus that wants to be your friend and wants to heal you of every affliction, that wants to break every chain. I want us to be that kind of church. I don't want the fact that we're on church circles surrounded by steeples that scare a lot of people to keep them from coming to First Broad Street. And so what does it look like for our church to be the light of the world? Our church leadership thinks, and I think, that starting a new campus is one of the steps that we need to move forward with. And so you received this morning a little yellow slip of paper. And on this little paper is a checkbox that says, yes, I would like more information about multi-site ministry opportunities at First Broad Street, UMC. There's a place for your name, your phone number, and your email. And we have scheduled 3 information sessions. And these are times that you can come and that you can hear the full vision that we have for multi-site ministry, for starting a new campus here at First Broad Street. We think that God is calling us in this direction. And so by the end of Lent, which is Easter Sunday, we hope to have at least 50 adults that are willing to commit to helping us start this new ministry of First Broad Street. Now, if we don't have 50, we're going to take that as a fleece that God doesn't want us to move in this direction at this time. But if we do have 50, we're going to take the next step toward extending the reach of First Broad Street United Methodist Church. The people that are called to be part of this launch team will commit to going through training throughout the summer. And our goal for now is to be able to launch the new campus on September 13th, which is the Sunday after Labor Day. We plan to try to incubate the community in some setting for around 12 to 18 months, probably in a downtown location because that's close to us and that's going to be the easiest place to begin. But then strategically, once we're able to get our feet under us, to be able to place ourselves in Kingsport so that we can reach the most unchurched and the most de-churched people that we can. Friends, for several years now, and Chelsea can tell you this, I struggled not with being a pastor, but with being, what does that look like in my life? What does it look like for me to be a pastor in my life? And she'll tell you almost every single day I had a different opinion of what that was going to look like. But where I ended up landing around 2 years ago is that I believe God had called me to church planning. And that church planning became really important to me because I feel like the very best way to save our denomination, to save the church in America, is to be able to intentionally plant new churches, new faith communities where new people can be accepted. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. The Methodist Church isn't the easiest place to be able to plant new churches. But then God showed up, and God worked in powerful ways. And when I came here to interview and to meet with Mickey, he said one of the things that we really want to do is to be able to start a new faith community. And I knew right then that God had placed me here for that reason. And so since July, I've been praying about what that looks like and what that looks like for our community. And so if you go to Sunday school class, me and Amanda came around your Sunday school classes, and I told you that one of the reasons I was here is to start this new worship community. I didn't have a clue what it would look like, but I knew that that's what God was calling us to do, and I know that's what God's calling me to do. And so me and Chelsea, we're fully invested in this. We're buying a house here in Kingsport. We're making our roots here. I want to be long-term, not short-term, because I care about Kingsport. This is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where I hope to die. But I want to see Kingsport become the kingdom of God. And I'm willing to give everything to make that happen. I'm willing to turn over tables to make that happen. I'm willing to get people mad to make that happen. But it is worth dying for. It's worth giving our lives for. And so what I want to invite you to do is to jump on board with me, to make this something that you'll care about, to make it a way that First Broad Street here in contemporary services, there in Sanctuary, and wherever else we end up in Kingsport, becomes a place that every single person in Kingsport can find their home. That every single person in Kingsport can realize that they are loved and accepted. And so as the band comes up this morning, there's going to be a time for you during this next song to fill out this little yellow sheet of paper if you are so desire. and to be able to place it in either this basket right here or the basket at the other end of the stage. And so if it's something you might be interested in, I really encourage you to find a time that you might be available to go to one of the information sessions. Friends, Jesus is the light of the world. And there are too many people walking in darkness for us to simply stay in these walls. There are too many people walking in darkness for us to simply go on as normal. There are too many people walking in darkness for us to be okay with status quo. So won't you join me? Because if God is for us, who can be against us?